I will say this one, and this will be a fun test to see if any of the any of the viewers or the cast members watch this interview. So in this current project, there are actual real books.
Hello, welcome to Metaverse Degen. I'm Lion. Raptor's currently working right now, but we are here joined by a wonderful guest.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, may I ask who you are, what you're known for, what got you started, and what got you into Vrchat?
Well, my name is Sprixer. I started Vrchat in 2020, like most people. I was a face cam Twitch streamer, and I met a boy playing Valorant, and he was like, "Hey, you should play this game called Vrchat." And I was like, "No, that sounds dumb." So I didn't play it for a while. I put it on my block list. And then he was like, "Oh, just come on. I got to show you something really cool that I did." And then I remember hearing the login sound for the first time, and I remember like internally telling myself, I was like, "Oh, I'm fucked, dude. This is gonna be a problem for me. I'm never gonna recover from this." So 5 years later, I think now. Outside of using it as a medium for streaming, because that's kind of what first got me into it, I realized I didn't have to be a face cam streamer. Whenever I played it, I just ended up talking to my chat anyways. So it's like, oh, I could just be a cute anime girl when I stream. And then I got ballsy, and I stood on a beach with a polka dot bikini, and everybody told me I was the worst person in the world for that. And now I guess we have a lot of people that just do dance streams, so I'd like to call myself the grandmother of thoughts. I had to wiggle so they could run, you know? So if you hate it, that's because of me. If you love it, it's because of me. And then outside of that, I ended up getting involved with a project called, at the time, Callous Roll. And it was basically just GTA RP, but in Vrchat. And it was all cyberpunky. And it was an okay project. But I then learned that there were several other projects out there of people doing them, like Fractured Thrones and Ascension Academy and the Metaverse. And so I kind of tried a couple of them. And some of them were good, and some of them didn't fit for me. And then I met a boy, and he made a map. And it was a joke map at first that I used on my stream. It's BattleTech inspired. I don't know if you know what BattleTech is.
I honestly haven't the faintest idea.
Okay, so it's basically the better of the sci-fi universes. Unfortunately, Star Trek and Star Wars beat that space race. But in my opinion, it's better. It's like Game of Thrones in space. And so we made a joke map with like an atlas. It was like a big mech and a hot tub. And then we slowly had people in our stream like, "Hey, can I come play? Like, can I come bring my OC?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure." But then so many people showed up that I had to start making rules. And then it turned into episodes, and then I started running a project. And then I ran this Actium Knights mech roleplay for like 25 episodes. And I kind of looked at my partner now. I was like, "Hey, you want to do it again?" And he's like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Let's do colonial horror." And because of that, we had seen so many things, so many projects in the space that just kind of stick to one thing. So like formerly Callous Row, now known as Neon Divide, is just sci-fi. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you know, and Ascension Academy is just magical academy, I believe is what it is. And Fractured Thrones is just medieval. And we're like, well, we don't want to do just one thing for 5 years. We want to do multiple stories because we really like designing worlds and stuff. And so that's how Oneshot Roleplay formed. Was we were doing our own thing, goofing off, and we attracted a bunch of other goofballs. And so now we run really high-scale roleplay projects that showcase on Twitch. And we're actually one of the first to be 100% above board, where everything's fully licensed, no game rips, all fully funded and developed.
Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing that. I actually have a couple of questions about some of the first couple of things you mentioned, which is
Yeah, for sure.
the first one that started everything, the mech role play. You said you had episodes and recorded. What were some of the first events and episodes like at the time?
Oh, difficult, because there's a lot of ways that people try to run these projects. And there's no set playbook. And I wouldn't say that the people who ran past projects were 100% transparent on how they did it either. They were all secrets that kind of were kept pretty close to the chest, reasonably so when you get into the new niche market. So they were messy, and they were really stressful because you would have about 40 to 50 players on a map. And they're all playing characters with unique backgrounds, and they all have desires and wants. And then you have to try and somehow balance that and make sure they all feel super fulfilled while also pushing your main plot line forward and like tying all those together. So at the time, we had no idea how to plan an episode even on the back end so we could all be on the same page. So I had a couple staff members, and it was, oh, well, this episode at some point in time, we're going to have the reactor explode. But other than that, it was pretty touch and go. So there was a lot of like back end Discord chatter, a lot of crying, a lot of fighting. It was messy, but the players seemed to enjoy it. So we kind of just kept going and polishing as we went.
Oh, okay. That's actually really awesome. And you mentioned colonial horror. You piqued my interest with that.
Yes. So Haven, who's my partner, not just in the project, but also my husband now, we sat down and had a conversation after ATK, and we're like, well, sci-fi is cool and all, and we're very big cinema buffs, we're very big storytellers, and I believe we were watching a show on Netflix. I think it was called Midnight Mass. And we were kind of shooting the shit about what we liked about it cinematically and the things that we kind of enjoyed about the character delivery. And then we kind of started to spin off into the concept of like colonial Salem witch trials. And from that, we actually created our own world that Blackwell, our next project, was set in, which is basically a small human town is trying to prepare and get ready for the winter in like late 1500s colonial times. And then really spooky, uncomfortable stuff starts to happen. And I won't give away any spoilers because a lot of people managed to save their VODs and put them up on YouTube, so if people want to go and see it. But it culminated in a lot of very big technical advances for us as a team. We started looking at the type of things that we could do with Vrchat's system in order to help our storytelling. So this is actually when we got paired up with a really talented developer called Metaverse Degen. She actually works with Vrchat's team. And we made a really unique menu system. We had a beautiful prop system where we could spawn props for people. But the highlight of Blackwell was we introduced tech where you could be in the same room as me, but the DMs could spawn a monster right there, and only you can see it. I can't. But it's an avatar-based thing. And so we started to really put on a bit more of a cinematic show for our viewing audience as well on Twitch at that point. Yeah. And we started to really start transitioning to what I said about like enjoying the delivery of Midnight Mass. Well, how would this look if you were watching a TV show? And so we started to kind of shift that way.
Okay. Oh, so I'm going to ask a question, and it's between the two and currently as well. What are some of the best ways you can tell story that the players will enjoy that also the viewers on Twitch or YouTube would enjoy? And how have you changed that over the course of time?
Well, I don't know if I've figured out the best way yet, but I figured out what works for us. So the best way to make sure that all parties are happy, I find now, is with this newest project, Return to Blackwell, which is a sequel. I spend months drawing a really big story outline, like from start to finish. So Return to Blackwell is supposed to run for about 26 to 30 episodes. And so I kind of do a beat map of all the big events and all the big story keys and stuff like that. And then I let my cast apply. And then after I approve all their character sheets, I take them all one by one, and I think I've got about 50 or 60 this time. And I start looking at places where I can tie them into the story. And so that's how I ensure that the cast is having a good time. Now, backing that question up a bit, for the viewing audience, it used to be just if you're going to watch a role play, you watch your favorite streamer who's got their little camera in the corner, And you see their facial POV, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a very intimate experience to be able to follow the character, and a lot of people like that. But for the viewers, because we realize that so many players have so many different interactions, for this new project, we decided to create a cinematic camera POV. So I have 3 camera people every Friday that go around and they follow the key story points that I highlight in our meetings. And so they're constantly switching dynamic angles between the 3 of them and sound balancing and capturing it all, so that when you're done watching your favorite player, you can go watch the cinematic POV on our Twitch and get kind of the overall important story beats, so that you can feel a bit more engaged with the plot and your favorite characters. And so I've kind of found, now that we've chosen to do that, that has had the most positive impact on our viewing audience, and by proxy our players, because they feel really happy and engaged to be on that stage as well.
Okay. So how is the character point of view different from the cinematic point of view?
So the cinematic point of view captures what I call the A plot line. You'll see it a lot in Saturday morning cartoons. You got your A plot line, your main characters are going through X, or your main world development's going through X. And then you got your B plot line, where there's kind of that side development story that gets tied up with the bow. I see the main cinematic view as the A plot line, and the players themselves are the B plot line. Because A is going to happen no matter what. But every individual player has this B plot line going on about how they react to A happening, and how they react to other people's reactions on how A is happening. And it was really confusing to figure that out at first, as the person who's done this for a couple of years. Because I admit we used to pay a lot more attention onto how this would just run, the A plot, instead of focusing on how we can tie the B plots in. And so I think that answers your question, actually.
I think it does. I think it's quite. So how did you initially interact with having an A plot line? And you mentioned you tried to figure out how to get B plot lines attached to it. What kind of led to the further development of your current system?
Wow. So back to the first project, ATK, we had our little mercenary crew. And what we did is we tried to simplify it by faction styling the players. So we had our engineers, our pilots, our logistics, our custodial staff. And what I attempted to do in the beginning was give them all little tasks in the ship to make them feel connected. However, I made the mistake of writing our main plot very central focused in the overall political and pilot sphere. So there was obviously a very uncomfortable shift towards a certain group of players that ended up really becoming main cast, if you think about it. And that's actually pretty common in these projects, to have what we call player characters and NPCs.
Yeah.
Now, shifting towards that, I started to realize, funny enough, through complaints, because no project's perfect, mine included, a lot of people felt left out. A lot of people felt like there wasn't a spotlight on them. And a lot of the criticism was super valid. And, then you just have some people that are loud for the sake of being loud. And once you fiddle through it and you listen to what people are saying and you take that feedback, I started to realize one of the biggest problems was I was writing these plots focused on a specific group of people and not the world overall. So that changed because, so like I said, we had ATK, we had Blackwell. And in between Return to Blackwell and Blackwell, we did a monster college roleplay called Varsity Booze. And so I tried to experiment a little bit there with spending more time in the preparation stage, with creating groups and systems and interdynamic links between the world and them. And it got a little bit better. But it wasn't until I started writing Return to Blackwell that I realized I needed to write the plot about the world and let the players interact with the world. That the main plot wasn't really supposed to focus on a player. It was supposed to focus on, story moving elements. And from that, we also ended up stepping away from the traditional player character and NPC system a lot of people do in their projects, because, well, there's no such thing as an NPC. There's no non-player characters in this space. They're all players, right? They're all people that are behind the avatar looking for an experience. And so we also started work with a developer. We actually met a really fantastic developer from the game Marbles on Stream. And we started working with them on AI-based systems. And so now a lot of the things that we would normally pull those secondary people for as well, well, we have AI to replace them now in a good way. They're like, it's like AI in a video game.
Yeah.
So now they can focus on being in character and interacting with the world.
Okay. Oh, it seems like you have quite the developed way to make people excited to play what would be an NPC role. I remember we've chatted with a few various role plays and trying to get people to play world characters, I guess NPCs, things that aren't like a character sheeted character per se, was difficult, they found. It seems like you found a way to kind of make people a bit more interested in playing the role.
I ask people, so the way we have it is we have a role that's called cast, and then we have a role that's called crew. But I realized that I couldn't just change the words and expect it to make a difference.
Yeah.
So crew are people that get offered the spot to take part in this. So I lay it out ahead of the time. And I make sure that the player is one of the people who are kind of like me, who are interested in jumping into multiple roles because there are different play styles. I'm personally somebody that doesn't like having one character. I like jumping around. I like helping out with the plot. I like having multiple characters. It's why I NPC'd for Fractured Thrones for as long as I did, because I loved being able to kind of change my mood. I blame my ADHD. And so on top of investing and making sure that we didn't have to call them for what I call monster or guard duty every single episode, because it gets a bit draining, I feel, when you're trying to exist in the world and then you have to spend half of it standing and waiting to play a monster for somebody else's experience. And so we kind of had this conversation, and I like to set expectations before a project. And I said, those of you that want to help out with crew, like, here's the system we put in place so we can respect your time. And we might call you, to do something. And you have every right to say no, but understand that if you come to help us, like, we'll return that in kind. And it's a balancing system. And so far, we've been running for 8 weeks now, because our episode's tonight. I've only had to call on crew once, and I only had to call on 7 of them. So.
Oh wow! So if someone's on crew, it's basically like being on call for when there's a moment their crew role needs to be played. Otherwise, they're a regular player.
Yeah, and they also get to choose. Like we have a very healthy community in our roleplay group, I'd like to think. Outside of being as passionate as we are about like the technical side of things, I'd like to think that we've fostered and continue to foster a community where we explain that there's a balance to play, to give and take. And so the people that I end up casting a lot of the times understand that it's okay to take a minute, like a step back from being a main character sometimes, to give to somebody else's story. So I always give them the option to show up. If they're a crew and we put the call out and they're in an important scene, I'm not going to make them leave that scene.
Yeah.
But a lot of them do consciously make the choice to step out of that and come and help out. Or sometimes I'll ask them before the episode so I can make sure that they don't plan something big and we interrupt it. I'll put a call out and I'll say, hey, this episode I'm going to need 5 or 6 crew. This is the type of content. It'll be dialogue based or it'll be combat based. And people will put their hands up. And I'll give them kind of an approximate idea. Like we might do it around hour 1 or hour 3. So just be prepared. And some people will argue that, oh, well, that's spoilery. And it's like, well, we have this thing called positive meta in OSRP where I think it's more important to set the expectations and let a player know than drop it on them randomly, because that's not a fun surprise for some people, if you know what I mean. So
yeah, I can understand that. And I've another question kind of was popped into my head while you were speaking as well, and it's a bit off the beat a little bit. But what was it like for you when you first wrote something and had people play in it?
So technically, I did a lot of writing for ATK. We usually have a lot of input from the DMs, but ATK was a bit more of a joint project.
Hmm.
I wrote small things for ATK. Like I kind of wrote the overall plot with Haven, my partner, but we had a lot of people bringing stories to the table, and it wasn't until Blackwell came around where like I wrote the religion, I wrote the pacing, I wrote the world setting, and it was it was like the biggest hit of dopamine I've ever had. Like, and I've been a streamer, and I don't mean to disregard anybody's support in that side, like, because you get throne gifts and donations and subs, but it was on a completely different level to create art and then have people want to live in it and be sad that there's only 4 hours a week, and then make fan art. And so unfortunately, it was like a drug. And I just kind of kept writing after that. And then I wrote the world for Varsity Booze, which is a geopolitical monsters trying to get their degrees to live amongst humans. And it was a bit of a more political take, if I'm being honest. And people really liked that too. And so, but then people kept screaming to go back to Blackwell, and then I wanted another dopamine hit. So I'm rewriting it.
Cool. So, of all the arcs in One Shot that you've taken part in or written, what have been some of your favorites and why?
For ATK, it was our missions, because we took a very human approach to doing combat missions with guns. We've seen a lot of other projects do. Metaverse is really good for their big, fantastical, magical fights or over-the-top sci-fi weaponry. Same with Neon. FT, still in my opinion, one of the best for medieval combat. Ascension, don't even get me started about how beautiful their magic fights are, but we wanted to take a big group of people and try something a little bit more tactical, a little bit more military. And what we tried to do in our finale for that was, we were like, okay, well, we have 2 stories we want to tell, so we took this really big group of players, and we took this really big group of players, and we did the thing you never do, and we split the party.
Oh.
And we ran this really intricate final finale where this group had to solve this puzzle in order to unlock this for this group, and this group had to do this to and they had to kind of work together over the radio. And it was the most stressful thing in the world to DM for. But it showed that we could add complexity to our storytelling that way and trust our players. And so that was definitely one. Blackwell, there is a particular scare that we managed to pull off. That made me really happy. It was a system that we worked on with FaZe. I don't know if you've ever watched Doctor Who with the Weeping Angels.
I'm very familiar with them.
Yes. So we coded, our players are investigating a manor, and there's a big room full of statues. And then the lightning flashes and one of them's gone. And so as they're walking around the manor, they turn around and they see it, and it's standing there. And the system was coded that it could read if a player looks at it to move closer. But only if a particular player looked at it. And so it was really funny to watch them as players, and you could almost see as people behind the headset get freaked out about walking around this manor trying to avoid this, because it's not avatar based. Like, it's not a human doing it, it's like an actual object. And there's one point where one of our players is talking, and he turns around and he looks at it, and it just rushes up to him, and I could hear the fear in his voice. That was a major score for me. And then with VB, it was, we pulled off so many really fun, tiny things. Like, it was college, so like we pulled off a school dance, and players went and took pictures and their little formal gear, and it was just so much more lighthearted that the whole project is actually a really good memory for me, because people just got to show up and go to swim club or go to monster studies, right? So.
Oh, well, thank you for explaining all that. All of those sound like really heartwarming tales. Another question is, how do you DM a lot of people and keep track of everything?
So in the first couple projects, it was all Google Docs and Discord. And so my job outside of doing this, because this is all just hobby based, is I am, well, I'm a bit of a work mercenary. I do the streaming and I do professional VA for games like the Battletech franchise and stuff like that, and YouTube. And on top of all of that, I do production and pipeline management for creators and creative consulting. So when you're working with people like that, because like I was doing work for like Drumsy and like Fillion and stuff like that, I had to get really, really organized on that side of my life. So I moved to using things like Notion documents and software like Monday and stuff. And then as I was working in those spaces, I kind of looked at it. And I kind of looked at what we were doing, because I had a friend that had introduced me to Notion, and he was like, we could probably use it for our project. And I was like, yeah, I bet we probably could. And so the introduction of the software was huge, because let me just be honest, a lot of VRchat communities operate within Discord. And if we're going to talk about Discord from a fundamental level of giving information to people, it's bad, because if you want to parse the information or separate it, then suddenly you have a bunch of overwhelming chats or threads. People get lost in that. People mute notifications. Plus, just with the way that Discord works, the moment you say something and the moment people interact with it, suddenly it's gone, right? And so Notion helped us out a lot with that. Not sponsored, by the way. But because of its versatility and the way that I plan stories, like episodes in a TV show with storyboarding, I set up a workspace for them. And so how it works now for us is we'll do the episode. I tell my players they have to update their sheets by Monday. So our episode happens on Friday. I tell people they have to update them by Monday. On Sunday, we have something called office hours with our staff, where anybody can kind of drop in and co-work and talk to each other and answer questions. And they all fill out what I call a dump sheet, because I have DMs that oversee specific groups of people. So we share the work. So Ash is my DM for all the Coven players and the church players. And my DM Noble is the one that takes care of the tradespeople and the mercenaries. And so it's their responsibility to go through the sheets, write their notes about what those groups of players are up to, their interests and stuff like that, and kind of condense it on a sheet. And then I go on Monday or Tuesday and I start reading through their notes and all the sheets, as well as I will do a watch along on the Twitch channel with our viewers for the cinematic POV, and we'll have a dialogue, and then I'm taking notes then. And then I write out the, I do a rough draft of the episode. One of the things that I find helps us is again, not only using the Notion docs, but blocking things into hour segments, because our project runs for 5 hours. And so then I'll put the rough draft in, and then we'll have a meeting on Wednesday, and we'll all go over it, and we'll talk about what's coming up. And my staff, because they pay so much attention, will say, oh, well, did you remember this? Or this might not work because it'll conflict with this. And so we make sure that we're balancing that. And then we assign DMs to specific hours and specific modules and make sure that we have proper coverage. And then we also ask the players constantly to give us feedback through something that I call stars and wishes. And so on their sheets, I tell them, like, tell me what you really loved about this episode. That's a star. And they go, oh, I love the combat. Like, it was so immersive. And then we tell them, like, if you want something, like, wish for it. So we say, you know, wishes, like, I would love to leave the fort more, or I would love to have more time with this character. And it's phenomenally easy to take most requests from players if you're not, like, super protective of your story. And so if, let's say my player, Frenchie, who plays Oliver, wants to spend more time with Walrus's character, I just put it on a sticky note on another piece of software I use called Miro, which is basically a big whiteboard. And I just look at it while I'm planning the episode, and I go, how do I put these two characters together? Oh, there's a mission going north. Guess they're both going north, you know? Done. And so, from what I explained, it's a part-time job to DM as effectively as we do for that many players.
Cool. So it sounds like since you started doing the working with streamers and YouTubers, that definitely enhanced how things have functioned. Was it like that prior to that, or what helped you develop
No.
all that?
No, it was messy at first because, like I said, nobody gives you a playbook, and this is a little bit of a taboo topic, but in the sake of transparency, there's not a lot of interconnective conversation between projects either. They're all very sequestered. A lot of project leads don't talk to other project leads. There's a lot of old bad blood in the community because it's been around as long as it has. There's a lot of new blood, bad blood, so you kind of have to figure it out as you go because nobody's going to tell you how they do it. And it was definitely through the substantial life experience that I've had through my career shift outside of the space as well. One of the admins, Magic 8 Ball, he's an adultier adult in real life. And so, like I said, he was the one that introduced me to Notion, and he's kind of been a very big influence on a lot of the more business steps that I've been taking, like with us incorporating and stuff like that as well. He's not only like a big brother to me, but he's one of the more invested people from the team on the business side, like the true admin. Because for our admin team, a lot of projects use the title admin as like head cheese, but we use it more traditionally, like actual administration. So all the behind the scenes paperwork. And so because of him, a combination with that, and then actually it was also a big factor was getting staff that wanted to play ball with these types of setups, that wanted the professional effort, that wanted the systems in place, because some staff members just want to clock in and clock out, and that's fine. It's a volunteer project. But unless you can get staff members to do what I call buy-in to these processes, like, it's not going to work. I can have a billion systems that in theory work well, but if the staff doesn't use them, they're useless. So it was definitely a multifaceted way of getting here, that's for sure.
Okay. So when you started making, or when the changes started being made to how you run things to get people to buy in, one would say, how much has the experience for the players and audience changed as you made those changes?
Well, speaking from the feedback that I've gotten, and the lack of complaints that we get, because you have to balance that too, because there'll always be people that have complaints. I've now learned that complaining is some people's bonding language, and you can't take offense to it. It just happens. I think the overall player experience has shifted to good, and there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, we get far less complaints and far more people feeling comfortable to ask for things, which I think we have to have a good culture and a good environment for players to be comfortable to ask to do things with their character. I've seen so much more engagement in players being excited to show up. You can kind of tell in projects when people are burnt out or they're not feeling it, because some players who will walk uphill both ways through a snowstorm to get to your project initially will start kind of calling in sick for, every reason under the sun, which isn't a problem, but you can tell when there's fatigue. We haven't seen any of that since Blackwell's come in. And another, I don't know if other roleplay projects really have this, because I'm not in a lot of the other servers, but I see so many players also spending their week sitting in voice calls watching VODs together. That the changes that we've made, even between Varsity Booze and Return to Blackwell, if I had to quantify it, I think we went from like 60% overall happiness rating to about 75, 80-ish. And so I'm happy with that jump. We'll never be at 100, but I think that's still a good improvement.
Okay. So with all the various arcs you have, what inspired them all?
Arcs is in like story arcs or like
All
the
the var-
individual projects?
all the individual projects and the stories you've written for them. Where do your inspirations come from?
Well, so ATK was a bit more selfish because, as I mentioned, it started as a joke between my then boyfriend and my now husband. It was kind of a love letter to one of the passions that we shared. And so we had already kind of canonically written out this like OC story between our characters, and we were kind of just playing that out and having fun. But a lot of it comes from me and Haven just enjoying the world of storytelling and being really influenced by media around us. So we could be watching Dune, and then suddenly we're pausing the movie and we're talking about, oh, like what type of sand-based scavenger society we would build and how we would, and then, you know, an hour goes by and we haven't finished the movie. And a lot of it is just me and my partner building worlds together as we cook or we clean, and saying, but we could do it and we could make it a world that everybody could love, and going from there.
Oh, well, that's really awesome. You're able to develop words like that. I'm glad you're able to have that kind of relationship to allow you to do that. So congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We made it through. That's for sure. Not a lot of people meet on Vrchat, immigrate to a new country, get married, and stay together for 5 years. So
I've heard a few stories of people doing that, but not many. Oh,
we I do not think that we would be where we are with OSRP without Haven and I having met and created such a relationship. And a lot of our communities is well aware of that as well. So he isn't here right now, but he is definitely the other half of the project for sure.
May I ask how you two met?
Yes. I was sitting in a club with my new friend, and he walked up and shot my friend 3 times in the chest because we met in roleplay. I was just a new role player. I was hanging out in Neon Divide, formerly known as Callus Row. I ran into him at Purple Lotus a couple times. We vibed off each other. We were both very sarcastic characters. I think I reached out to him first because one of my viewers, or his viewers, came over to my channel and was worried I was actually drunk when I was role-playing being drunk. And so I apologized to him, and we started talking. We ended up hanging out, and he introduced me to Battletech. He likes to tell the story like the zombie movie 28 Days Later. He said he was absolutely smitten for me. We met up when I was in Los Angeles doing some voice acting recording. And then ever since that, it was sealed for us. We were back and forth whenever I was in LA for work. He'd come up to visit me in Canada. And then I think maybe a year of dating, he was up here and we were getting his immigration, and we haven't looked back since. I don't think we've spent a day apart in like 3 years.
Wow. Congratulations, by the way. That's an amazing story.
He is my best friend for a reason. When we tell people we live together and we work together and we are always around each other, there's a level of people not believing it. And I mean, I get it, but I also kind of feel bad for people because I get to spend every day creating with my best friend. So
Wow. Well, I wish the both of you a long and successful life together.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure, I don't know, with the way that we spend too much time indoors and don't touch grass, I would not be surprised if it was a shorter life. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, well, to ask another question as well, what have been some of your players' favorite stories as you have the Stars and Wishes program to hear their feedback? What have been some of their favorite moments or stories that they've interacted with?
So we didn't really start Stars and Wishes until Blackwell, VB, and return to Blackwell. So in looking at Blackwell, what we did with that system is we asked all of our players to write a secret, like a bad secret that they had. And so, for example, one of our really talented actresses, Hydrasia, wrote a story involving her sister's death. And what we did was we took all these secrets and we used them to basically use that psychosomatic system I was telling you about, where people can see things. And we created and tailored individualistic scares for these players. And every once in a while we'd pull one out. And so for her, it was a man with a hatchet chasing her. And so that was a pretty big favorite in Blackwell for our players, was a bit more catered experience to some of their backgrounds. For Varsity Booze, weirdly enough, the biggest feedback I got was season 1, episode 5, specifically. We had all of these monster students at COSOL, which was the university, and they all had their different groups. You had your cheerleading, your swimming, your cooking club, your political clubs and stuff. And they had a school festival where they all had booths, and they had to basically earn coins from visiting officials, so like the mayor, a few celebrities and stuff like that, to keep their club funding. It was a really simple concept, but what we did is we kind of put them in the driver's seat of this kind of like episode that had stakes, and where we just gave them new players to interact with and feel like they were earning something. And between the club festival energy and the kind of after party energy, I believe we also did a fundraiser where we had live singers and stuff like that afterwards on stage. Apparently it was just it was a huge hit for them for some reason. If I could bottle that episode and tell you specifically what we did right, I think I'd be rich, because we somehow hit lightning on that one without really realizing how. That to date seems to be the one that we've had the biggest feedback on, funny enough.
Oh. So when you write for stuff like Varsity Booze, for example, with this episode, how do you, when you're writing the story you want to tell, how do you balance story versus what the players will interact with between the two? Or do you write for the player interaction?
Degenerates. E-boys, e-girls, furries, you know who you are. But you don't know who we are, do you? We're First Class Coffin, the premier goth rock band in VR. Check it out. There's that on our YouTube channel. We got merch. We have what you need.
FirstClassCoffin.RIP.
That's as real as a Hot Topic pair of trip pants for $80.
Your mom's a Hot Topic.
I kind of stopped writing for player interaction, because trying to predict what a player is going to do when you give them something is like trying to predict which way a pig's gonna run after you poke it. Like, it's anybody's guess. And so I plan very loosely now. I stopped trying to lead the players' directions, and I started giving them open-based things to react to. And so what I do is I do have my overall plot that won't change, because it's high enough from the players in the world scale, it won't. But we'll write an episode, and let's say your player gets a clue to a murder mystery. I don't know if you're going to keep it to yourself. I don't know if you're going to go tell your friends. I don't know if you're going to run onto the street screaming. I don't know how many people are going to get involved. So what I do is I just give it time to breathe. I don't write the conclusion for that in that episode, because I want to see how all the players are reacting. I want to see what they write on their sheet about it and what they intend to do about it. And so I just kind of took my hands off of it a little, and it's worked out really well.
Oh, that's really good to know. So with all of these things, as you mentioned, like the scares with the Weeping Angel-esque thing, the Varsity Booze events, with the world, how long does world prep for such stories or events take?
It depends. So the model that we've adapted is we have something called an A project and a B project. And our A projects are the really big, heavy lift projects that have these huge maps and these huge systems and these huge stories and these huge casts. And then we have the B projects, which are the maps that we make to tell smaller little one-shots that we're also going to be releasing for Patreon access, so other roleplay groups can use them. And so while we're running the big projects, with the extra time we have, we're casually working on other maps in the background. So right now we have Return to Blackwell, but we're also working on a post-apocalyptic map. We have a horror sci-fi map that's also about 60% done. I'm working on a really big one that we've named the project. It's one of our A projects called BAM. It's Blood and Magic. I've already put out like 170 hours into that map. And that one's been, I've been working on it in the background for like a year now, I think. And so if we're working on it casually, it's a little bit hard to explain because once we get to our break here for Return to Blackwell, we'll kind of look at which project people are most interested in, which one we kind of have the most work in, and then we'll start to like narrow our focus on it. But for Return to Blackwell in specific, this one we're running right now, which is an A project. Sorry, my headset. Once we decided it was what we were going to run and we were going to focus on it, it took us, I want to say 2.5 months between the team to get the avatars made, because all of the avatars are custom, none of them are rips. To get the world finished and updated with all the internals and the systems. If we're working full time, we can do it in 2.5 months. I'd prefer moving forward now, looking at the level of effort that our team had to do. Our next project, I'd probably say that should be extended to 3.5-4 months for the mental health of the team, so that we don't do it, hit the project to run, and then we're running on fumes. So anywhere between that 2.5 to 4 month period is what it would take to produce.
Oh, wow. So dipping back into the player's favorite story, keeping these themes a bit, what inspired the festival and the investment system that they interact with that they enjoyed so much?
So Varsity Booze was definitely, well, I say this, all of the projects are experiments because we're still trying to figure out how to do things that work. With Varsity Booze, we wanted to look at social interaction because Varsity Booze at its core was what we define as a social lobby. There was less expectation and huge modules moving and more about giving players pieces of things to interact with socially. So, you know, there were going to be issues with the swim team having a Lotus drug scandal. And that's all we gave them. And then we let them to like interact dynamically for hours about who to trust and how to figure it out, etc. And with the club-based episode, it was about giving them a social group that they had to defend on top of all of those interconnective dramatic points and relationships, because some people, and I'll use the swim team as an example, some people in the swim team were getting along, some people had opinions on who should be captain and who should take part, but now you have to force all of these people with different ideas and interests to work together to save the thing that they're all a part of. And I think that that's fun dynamic storytelling, because as much as people like combat and as much as people like flashy horror effects, at the base of it, most of your role-playing base, I've learned, are there to tell interpersonal stories. The combat and everything's cool, but a lot more people get into roleplay to live out different styles of relationships, and I don't even mean romantic. It can be friendly or adversarial. Some people use roleplay as therapy to work through bad feelings. So we tried to make a space with Varsity Booze where we could let players focus more on the social aspect instead of, well, all the other role plays that I've mentioned, including Metaverse, have a very high focus on combat. But we wanted to see what players would do without that.
Okay. Oh, so I'm not too familiar with how episode 5 went. Once you developed everything and kind of set the stage for the players and the festival, how did that end up? How did they interact with it? What did you see? And did you like what you saw from the from your perspective watching them interact with it?
Yeah, I saw a lot of characters who were normally shy engage
Hmm.
with each other. I watched a really interesting dynamic where a lot of the clubs were gently competing with each other, obviously, for the tokens. I saw a little bit of underhanded, like, oh, you should give your token to us, because I hear those guys like stink kind of energy, you know?
Mm.
Which I think one of the things that needs to be more gently approached and experimented with is players getting comfortable with being adversarial, even in small amounts, because for a lot of players, funny enough, it's hard to be antagonistic. A lot of people want to be friends. A lot of people want to be friendly, and it's just human nature for a lot of people. And I saw a very unique adversarial side come out in players because I think it was comfortable for them because the risk factor wasn't as high as I'm going to be adversarial and it could cause a player to die. Like you
Yeah.
see in some of the more intense combat-based role plays. You had I'm going to be adversarial because I want my club to succeed. So the stakes being lowered gave people a very gentle way to step into that type of role play style that I don't see a lot of people do. And I was very pleasantly surprised to see that.
What were some of the adversarial things you saw happen?
I saw players, they'd be talking to like characters like the mayor at like, let's say like the art club, the cheerleading club, and then you'd see some of the girls from the other clubs slowly and gently walk over and like steal the conversation and like walk them back to their booth. Or I saw a few players asking members of other clubs, oh, I just need your help over here, and then they would walk away from their booth and there was nobody there. Like it was very silly, lighthearted. We called the project a telenovela, because it had that gentle but over the top social energy, and I saw a lot of that come out.
Oh, that's actually pretty interesting. And was there anything you've ever written in any of the things you've built for players that you wished players found or saw?
Oh, all the time, all the time. No plan survives first contact with players like this because I call it. Well, I don't call it. It's called the park bench issue. You can spend all this time making the most beautiful place for your players to sit, and then they never use it, and they'll go sit on a box over there because for some reason the structure of that appeals to them more than the thing you spent several hours on. A lot of the times in Varsity Booze, there was a lot of interesting political lore that I wrote, in my opinion. We had these two political groups at school called WAP and MILF. So it's like Monster, Independent Liberal Front. And like, it was really fun. And we had a lot of fun creating it in the writing room because on paper, the story's fun about how some monsters think we should integrate with humans and some monsters think we shouldn't, right? However, I think at the point in time that we introduced it, players just weren't comfortable or interested in engaging in a political plotline because it just got a little too close to the uncomfortable situations in real life, right? Like, if you think about world building from that perspective, it would make sense that those two groups exist in this world. However, what we thought would be interesting and engaging with that adversarial energy we were talking about earlier, the players did not want to get involved. And at some point, we just kind of set it down because we weren't going to force them to do it, It was a swing and it was a miss, and we kind of just had to accept it.
Okay. Was there anything else you wish they saw within any of your worlds or stories that isn't as like uncomfortable or may have been uncomfortable, not uncomfortable things you want like the players to know about that may not be seen again? Or maybe.
I will say this one, and this will be a fun test to see if any of the any of the viewers or the cast members watch this interview. So in this current project, there are actual real books that you can flip through with lore that I would say is important or useful that are just hidden around the map. But I didn't tell them that they were there because I wanted players to explore and have more of that gamification this time around. So like we've introduced them to looting. That's another thing they haven't really figured out yet, is when they go to different points of interest. There's physical loot that they can take as well. But these books are a big one because I have like diegetic information about like the religions that they're all really interested in and the history, and nobody's really like, they see the set dressing and they're like, oh, it is what it is, and they walk by it. And so these books are laid out to encourage people to explore the environment, and I'm going to see if they find them or not. I'm going to see how all that translates.
In the current thing they're playing now, what is some of that lore that may have already been tracked or they're found, do you think?
So the lore is essentially in Blackwell. You've got two main religions. You've got the Church of the Offered Sun, which ties back to a lot of preconceived notions about pre-existing religions. So Judaism, Christianity, all of that kind of sect. And then you've got your vagabond religion, which has a lot of similarities to Wiccan culture, pagan culture, Indian culture, stuff like that. And the religions play a huge motivating factor in that A plot I was talking about. Because this is a story about humans experiencing something as large as divinity and how it affects humans on the base level when you've got this little human and basically gods. And humans don't have powers, they're just humans. So how do they work with it? And so there's a lot of texts about old stories or parables or rituals that I've scattered across the map to kind of give them a sense of connecting with it and understanding a few things to maybe move their knowledge up on how to interact with that A plot.
Okay. So have you seen any where players have been gathering most within those different religions, the sects you've scattered throughout? Where do people tend to gravitate to?
I think due to the way that the original Blackwell ended up, we had the very stereotypical, like, the church wasn't a great guy kind of storyline. A lot of people actually gravitate more to the vagabond culture, which is funny because of how secretive it is. So I think there's two parts there. I think there's the comfort, because a lot more people find enjoyment in pagan style, multiple gods, and then the fact that it's secret, right? And players always want to be involved in the secret plot. So there's, in a story where this fort is supposed to think that the vagabonds are kind of creepy and outsiders, we actually have a lot more players interested in trying to befriend them and figure things out and go that route.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. What were you expecting the players to go to when you made that? If you did.
The vagabonds. Because I've learned that players like what they can't have. If I tell them that they can only have X weapons, they're going to try and find a way to smuggle a different weapon. The moment you say something is off limits, we've trained players in media with anime and movies and books that they are the special chosen one. You've got your basic story concept, where if you look at like Star Wars and the hero's journey style type event, where, you know, you start with nothing and you train and you gain knowledge and you explore and then you become the hero, you know. So we have a lot of men that follow that plot that try to do weapons training. And then you've got the more feminine charged writing style is what it's called, where, you know, you've got the players that have been special all along. It just takes somebody to recognize it. And I've realized that everybody has a degree of that. You either have people that have they want the special along plot or the hero's journey, and putting the vagabond plot there, like, that just attracts everybody. They'll either want to work to being a vagabond, or, oh my god, I've known the magic of the rituals all along. My mother was a vagabond, and I was, you know what I mean? And they're not wrong for that. We've trained them media-wise, so it makes sense they'd want to go that way.
Okay. Now, what have been some of your favorite or memorable moments watching players interact with things you've placed in the world or the story?
So with this new project, I wrote the Coven lore, and the Coven is basically, they're not practicing witches, they're not magic. The term Coven comes from that very sisterly concept of a group of women. And so it's a group of women that have come from all walks of life, that have been abused or ridiculed or possibly persecuted, and then they make this really dangerous trip down to this fort to have a sense of belonging. And through the 100 years that they've been there, they've kind of taken scraps of what they understood from the vagabond faith and created their own rituals. And I spent a lot of time writing out rituals to welcome new players or to say goodbye when they die. And so both experiences have happened so far. We've had a new person join the Coven, and we've had a player die. And the girls have performed these rituals from the lore in the session, you know. So they've prepared the body to be buried, they've danced on the grave, they've, you know, bathed in the river under the moonlight together, and it was really cool to see that world building followed through by so many players.
Okay. How do you handle player death, may I ask?
So player death is a unique experience for everybody. On the technical side with Blackwell, we have something called a death scene. And so when a player goes through all of their roles and they finally pass, there's a space that we give them after the DM monologue to have that dramatic final last moment. And then we use a system to teleport them to, and I'm not going to spoil it because it hasn't been seen on screen in our new project, but in Blackwell, the original, we'll teleport them and they would stand in this creepy dark forest, and this black specter would circle them, and then suddenly it would engulf them. We'd blind them because we can do that with our system. And that was it. It was a very cinematic death and made them have their moment and last words. And then we teleport them back to the spawn room, and the DM that was in charge of that normally goes into the spawn room with them and checks on them. Because player death is different for a lot of people. But more often than not, it is always accompanied by a high from having that moment of being a focus point, and then a low of loss. Because, you know, you've been a part of something, you've been engaged in something, it's like getting off of a roller coaster, like it's done. The finality hits people after a while, and thankfully with this project, we allow people to re-roll, but in Blackwell, it was, when you're dead, you're done. Like, it's over. Like, there was a finality to the project that we attempted, which went over okay. There were some hard feelings, I won't lie, but people get attached. But we try to handle it with care, because it's also you engaging in a social circle with your friends, and then through fate or luck, you're removed from it. So until you have a new character, you're removed from your social circle for a while. You're not engaging, you're not coming every Friday, you know? So I think that can be a little hard on people too sometimes.
I can understand that. I've had some friends over, like, outside of Vrchat who do, like, D&D, Call of Cthulhu, those tabletop roleplay systems, and player death for a lot of the DMs always was a hard subject to breach or talk about for that very reason. Because as you said, people are invested in what they're playing, and they've been that character for who knows how long. And that was a subject I wanted to ask about for someone who's been doing it as long as you, just how you handle that subject. So thank you.
Well, it's also about expectations. So like when we run projects like Blackwell that are dark and grim and very adult story coded, there's a lot of pre-meetings with the cast, a lot of expectations set. So not only do I preach culture in a project and, you know, the rules and everything, I also explain to them the tone of the project. And so with Blackwell, or the Blackwell series in general, it's not about how your character lives. Blackwell will be the story about how you die. So we set them up with the expectation. We tell them, live bold, make choices, and be prepared that when you go out, it will make an impact. Make that part of your footprint, right? Don't fear it, because, and I think what helps with that too is some projects are just, they'll turn their season on and then they'll go with an undisclosed amount of episodes, which isn't a bad thing. But I noticed it makes characters really protective of how they play, because they go, well, I don't want to lose my character and then find out there's 20 more episodes. So they play closer to the chest. And so for us, we're very transparent now with how long our projects run. And we never go over 30 episodes. So like ATK was, I think, 25, 27. Blackwell was 18. Varsity Boo was 2 seasons. It was 10. And then it was 10. And then for this one, it's 1 arc of 13 episodes. Then we take a break in the winter. And then we'll come back for 13 to 16 based off of how much time I need to close out the story. And so if you give them a roadmap, I find players will gauge their level of interaction that way. I find people taking bigger risks, even though they know our system can be punishing. They in their head make out the math for themselves. Oh, 13 episodes. Well, if I die in this first arc, there's 13 more episodes. I can make a new character. Or, yeah, I'm going to play it safe now, but as I get closer to the end, and I know that's kind of when I'm okay with going out, I'm going to be bolder. I'm going to be louder. Like, it's trust. Player trust has been huge for us.
So with that kind of system, have you seen any of your players kind of write their own story death in a sense that ended the way they wanted, versus like being stabbed by a goblin or something on accident or whatever?
I've seen both. I've had a player in the past, funny enough, get killed by me as a story DM. I gave them plenty of warnings not to walk up to my very dark and mysterious hooded creature that had a knife and said, if you keep walking close, I'll stab you. I think I warned them like 5 times. They died because I stabbed them. Some players like to be in control of that for a few reasons. Some, funny enough, I had a long conversation about this. Some don't want death to be unpredictable because that's just real life. And that's kind of scary, right?
Yeah.
So some come up to me and they say, you know, I think it's time. I think I'd like to do something really daring this episode, and I'm okay if it results in my death. And we accommodate because that's a player request. Some just like to be on the ride, and they love that gotcha thrill, you know, of if I go out there, I might not be coming back, and they get a little high of it. I think it's pretty even across the board with that, actually.
Did you have any that you particularly thought was interesting or you liked?
Let's see. If I'm going to talk about unscripted deaths, for Blackwell, there was a particular situation. The way that we marketed Blackwell it was a giant game of Clue, essentially. It was PvEP. And so we were really testing the players on that social dynamic, as I was talking about, but in a much more stressful situation. We had a player that was playing a town regent, and we had several other players kind of underneath them. Discourse happened in the middle of town, and one of our female actors, Star, very talented, she swung her hammer at him, rightfully so, player on player violence, and then instantly got shot. And in colonial horror and with the medical system we had, she didn't survive the role. Going back to a bit of the conversation we had about player death, we were really impressed with the way that she shifted the story by taking that action. And to this day, it's still one of my favorite player interactions because she stayed true to her character. She did something bold, and there was a risk attached to it. Now, ultimately, she paid the risk, and that was one of the situations where we followed her into the spawn room to make sure she was okay. What happened in there doesn't need to be publicized because that was her personal space and time.
Of course.
But we did check on her. And to see a player take that action, make such an impact, and then also feel the dramatic sense of loss, it'll always stay with me.
Ready? And what kind of impact do deaths have, may I ask? What kind of result are you hoping would happen with someone choosing their end?
The first thing that we hope for as writers is for it to have a deep emotional impact on the players they've made other connections with. A lot of the players that we cast, outside of just being talented, and when I mean talented, I don't mean the best actors, but talented as in engaged. I like to see when players die that pretty much shatter the social dynamic that exists. Sometimes they're the glue. Sometimes they're somebody's best friend. Sometimes they're a lover. And I always want a player's death to take the story and then flip it sideways. I don't care if I have to rewrite at that point. I don't care if I have to adjust things, because I want the world to feel real enough that the loss dramatically changes somebody's arc, because that's what happens in real life when you lose somebody.
Now, have you always tried to write a story that feels real or build a world that feels real? And how do you do such a thing?
I try to build worlds that feel immersive. Real is subjective. The experiences that the players have with all things supernatural and stuff like that obviously will have an element of fantasy to it. But the level of social connection is what I want to feel real. I want them to feel dedicated and devoted to those interpersonal relationships as they make their choices. And it's it's a lot. Sorry, I forgot the base question. I got distracted by my cat. It's the ADHD.
It's okay. I asked, how do you create worlds that feel real or immersive, or a story that you want the players are interacting with? Because you were mentioning earlier about the player death, that the deaths make them feel real when someone dies. They want to flip on a head. How do you construct a world that will feels real or immersive to the players?
So it's two parts. It's number one, I do a lot of pre-work before we start the project for social connection and groups and dichotomy. So like with the factions in Return to Blackwell, they're all interdependent on one another. The guild needs to pay everybody for the jobs that the mercenaries do. The coven needs to make tonics for the guild, for the doctors. The doctors heal people. The guards protect people. They all have a reason to interact. And so when I give them enough of these social rules to abide by, then the second part is just trust. I let them operate. I let them control their economy. It takes no skin off my hands to adjust small things that may and do break. And so to make it feel real, you have to depend on the players to make it real. It goes back to that conversation where I told you I could make this really cool thing, but it doesn't matter if they don't connect with it. So sometimes I'll write portions of the world kind of vague, I'll let the project go for 3 or 4 episodes. I'll see what they're all attracted to, and then I'll flesh those areas out instead of doing a bunch of work over here and they don't look at it. So it depends on the player and how they interact, what makes it full.
Okay. Now, I have another random question as well. Were there any moments
Yeah.
throughout everything you've done where the players have surprised you either by using world economies differently or like the U equivalent of the DM giving the Dungeons and Dragons player a magic bag and now they're dropping boulders from the sky? Any moments like that?
A little bit actually. So
I give that
So
one
we
as a
had some
specific reference.
players.
That's why. It happened.
in VB, yeah, we were really careful not to give these monsters magical powers. So there's like, a barrier over, but some of them for plot reasons did. And they're watching. It was harmless in the end because like it didn't break anything, but we're doing curses on people that are just happening in the middle of episode, and then I'm finding out that this person has a curse on them, and I'm like, oh, I didn't think that was okay. Well, I'm not gonna retcon a curse on this person. I'm trying to contact the dead with the demon summonings. Oh, you are? Okay. Well, now I have to think about how you would do that. Okay, I'll catch up. These people over here are trying to like talk to ghosts, and I'm like, you guys should just be going to college. I don't know, like. So that and the new Return to Blackwell, the econ system. I have this one player, I love him to bits. It's really funny. He plays Francis. His name's Clock. The guild's like the accountants, the project managers, if you will, of the fort. He's just taxing everybody because I let him do blue booking. I let him kind of help with the economy because that's his job. And some players like blue booking, and he loves it. And I find out that if the tavern wants to expand, he's gonna like up their taxes by 40%. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, sure, why not? Have fun. Okay.
How did that end up after he started increasing the taxes and stuff? How did people react to it?
Oh, I have to resolve this like this episode. I have to figure out what to do. Like this is an actual, like I went to the meeting on Wednesday and I found out and I was like, oh, huh. Well, now and this is an interesting situation is I have a player that is having fun doing the blue big stuff, right? With the econ. And I've got a player plot line for expanding the tavern that has effectively been stopped in his eyes. And so now my job is to figure out how to gently make both players happy.
I could see how that would be difficult, ruining one's fun or to harming another story. I could see why that'd be a difficult place to be in.
That's where the conversation of community and culture comes into play. I'd like to hope that I have so many returning players and so many new players that I've cultivated an environment with my staff where they understand that it's not no, it's not quite. It's let's adjust it. So if he wants to tax them, maybe we talk about lowering it so it's more obtainable for this player, but he gets free snacks at the tavern, right? And things that, because this player has a sweet tooth like you wouldn't believe. And there's a balancing act, and there are some players that will historically just be mad at you for not letting them be the Midoriya that they want to be, the main character syndrome. And to that I say, not every project is for everybody, and if you're not having fun and you don't like the way we do things, you are more than welcome to go find a different project, And a lot of the returning players know that, thankfully.
So another fun question tailored to the situation you just spoke of. Since this won't be releasing till long after this episode airs, I'm assuming it's streamed tonight, correct?
Yeah.
How do you hope this will play out?
So this is where I introduce a new concept to this conversation called story characters. And so we have cast, we have crew, and I have story characters. And they're staff members for me or trusted veterans of the space And veteran to me means I've worked with them enough that I know that their play style is one that can help guide story. And these are players that are gifted bits of meta knowledge from the A plot to help me push. Because I do use traditional over-the-shoulder ghost DMs, but I find sometimes things are more organic when I tap Fulcona, who plays the leader of the coven, on the shoulder, and I say, hey, I need to move this plot along. Can you do this ritual tonight with your girls? You know? Fulcona, who it's a more organic trailing of story that way. And so how I'm going to approach this is we have a brand new character that was introduced called the Adjudicator. He's basically the big guild guy from the city. And he's coming to kind of oversee how things are going and be a pressure point for the guild. Now that a lot of power dynamics have changed there. And so I'm going to use him to be the catalyst between these two players because he has subtle influence over Francis, but we don't want to steamroll him. So he's going to, this Adjudicator character is going to speak to the tavern owner, hear about the problem, and then go to Francis and gently suggest mediation topics so that we can get this project running. And because it's a character with a little bit of power, this player is more likely to engage with them about finding a different solution. Because I'm not going to tell the player how they have to solve it. I'm going to give them the opportunity with that view of power to work towards finding a bit more of a common ground so that this player can have their storyline. If that doesn't work, then I might have to get it more heavy-handed, but I'm going to put it in the player's hand first to resolve.
How do you suspect they will play this out?
With a player like Clock, who's very technical, I think that they will look at it as a interesting plot line to become more involved. And I think that if they're confused about it, one of the best things that I know them for is they'll just ask their group DM questions about how it could proceed, and they might have an out of character conversation out of episode and then come to an agreement there. And that's what we talk about, positive meta, right? So they're going to say, hey, so I have some ideas. Do any of these work for you? And then Magic 8 Ball, who plays the Adjudicator and is the group DM, will say, well, I think this one might work here and this one might work here. Let me check in with Raven, who's the group DM for the tavern staff. Those two DMs will talk about what their players want and kind of reach a bit of a conversation topic. Now, let's say hypothetically one of those players says, no, I don't want to do that. Very, very unlikely with these two players I'm talking about, but for the sake of conversation. That's when it becomes a bit more of a stressful situation for my staff, and that's when I step in. And I tap that player on the shoulder and I say, look, I get that you're frustrated. We can talk about why you're frustrated, but the choice you're making cuts off another player's type of fun. So we're going to move in a direction that respects both your plot lines. You can help be a part of that choice, or I can just do it myself. And I give them one last opportunity to be involved in the solution before I push forward.
Okay. Now, another question I have for you is, in the years you've been doing this, what have been some of the more difficult things to do, and how did you overcome the problem? Are you enjoying the episode you're watching so far? Then feel free to check out the rest of the stuff we have over here in the Metaverse Degen network. We have other interviews from everyone from Vrchat staff to VCAT and PJKT. We talked with world builders and creators. So if you want to learn more about VR and VRChat, check it out. Also, we have a actual play podcast, Hold My L, which honestly, we're just a bunch of idiots rolling dice. So if you like that kind of thing, feel free to come hang out with us over there. And if you should find any other socials and stuff, you can go on metaversedegen.card.co. Over on Patreon, we actually started putting the pre-show content for Hold My L, which we talk about before the show, and as we all kind of start funneling into the world, getting ready. So if you want to go see that as well, feel free to go to our Patreon, which if a few people already subscribed, we'd like to give a special thanks to Frozen, Future Oracle, Aliquum, Niche, and Forbidden Zero. Thank you very much. Funny little hint, Forbidden Zero is also the DM.
In ATK, in our first run of it, and the only run of it, we got to our finale. I was riding high on the finale. It was great. We had done something. We had managed to get 40 people together every, I think, Wednesday for something. It felt good. And then as we're in the throes of ecstasy from finishing it, I get a message from a player who had joined halfway through the season telling me how upset they were about how they didn't get to fulfill anything they wanted. Even though the player had joined halfway through, I had tried to set expectations. I explained we could do more in season 2. And it absolutely kicked me to the ground. It actually ended up building, unfortunately, a bit of a complex with me where anytime we finish a project now, I'll go, oh, and then I'll crash out wondering who's unhappy, you know? So that one really sucked. To talk about the elephant in the room as well, about halfway through our Blackwell run, there was a very large issue in the roleplay community overall. And the details are unimportant, but the point was, this side said, I don't like you. Here's my proof. This side said, this should have been private. We could have talked about it. And because both of these people were very big figureheads in the community, it's split. And remember how I told you project heads don't talk? But we all kind of have the same pool of role players. Role players do multiple projects. And that led to a mass exodus of multiple role players from different projects depending on what side they picked. So person A had this side, person B had this side. I had to, in that moment, make a choice. And it wasn't to pick or host either side, as much as people think it was. I was happy to host both of them. But what I did do was I spoke publicly about how I didn't think it was necessary for a very popular third party to be profiteering off of the situation. Because it was dramatic. I made that very personal statement. I'm not one to usually get involved, but it was very frustrating to see somebody that the community really respected be so unabashedly bold about such a situation. And as a result of making that statement, I had a mass exodus of people in my project because they thought that I didn't support side A. And it sucked in the moment because there were a good amount of people that I thought were really talented and fun to be around, and I wasn't upset with them. I was upset with the situation. And losing the cast that we did for Blackwell didn't really change the plot or anything. If anything, it made it easier to manage because we had less people to write for. But it did feel like I had lost really good people. It took me some time to understand why people might make choices. And, you know, introspectively, people will come and go, right? And so the residual fallout from that, we've been working really hard as a community to create OSRP as that neutral middle ground between projects. You take your shoes off at the door. I don't want to deal with any of that. Who you are here, I don't give a crap if you don't get along with this other player in this other space. If you're both here, you're both adults and you can both leave. And so after that happened, it really strengthened my resolve to want to be a third party, even despite me speaking up and not enjoying, like I said, the profiteering. However, asterisks, there were very deep scars that were left in the community from this, even to this day. I remember as a result, when I went to TwitchCon last year, and I was excited to go to the Vrchat roleplay meetup, the scars still run deep enough that the individual that I spoke about got into my physical space when I went. Yeah. And so that's when I learned that some people take this stuff really seriously. And that's okay. But it really made me realize that if I, as somebody that's as big in the community as I am, because I'm not small, and as a streamer, if somebody could make me feel that way, I had a really big desire to make sure, or at least make an effort, to create a space where that couldn't happen to people. Because it was a horrible experience for me.
I can understand why.
And that's probably been the biggest, most difficult part about this, is that not those people, but that side of the community, the side of the community that really takes a lot of things to heart, and they continually perpetuate the negative experiences that they had with people instead of moving forward. And there's a myriad of people who do it. Like, it's not just one individual or one group. Some people just get really into roleplay, and this is their community. And I like to create a ground in OSRP where I have people in the project now or in the space that have been just absolute assholes to me. But we've talked. They asked to join because they want to be part of a community, and I wouldn't be who I said I was if I didn't put my money where my mouth is and give them a second chance. And so the hardest part about all of this, like I said, was just combating that level of the community. I don't think it's ever going to get better. Personally, I think it's just something we're going to learn how to deal with better.
Yeah. I think with a lot of role-playing gaming, there's always going to be those people that take it very seriously. I remember back when my first times I've ever sat at a table, we had a person who would take this seriously. He was a metagamer, the kind of person who would like scan over a sheet, make sure every stat did the most damage and the most things, so that when he did a thing, it would like change wherever he was. And I can see why that would be a difficult thing. And I'm sorry you had to have an experience like that.
At the end of the day, I try to separate myself from a lot of it. I think that it's really important that people are passionate about this hobby. And how much time people spend in it versus how much time people don't, I'm not here to dictate. Right? You got some people that eat, sleep, breathe, and live roleplay, and the hobby just genuinely wouldn't be a hobby without those people. And then you've got the hobbyists that, you know, they work a 9 to 5, they come in on a Friday, do their roleplay like it's a taekwondo class, and then they leave. And I want a space that can support multiple types of investment, but for me, I have to keep distance from the community that I support. So I don't really hang out in the voice calls. I don't really get involved in multiple projects because I need to keep my sanity. And so I let people come to our project and kind of experience what we do. But even for myself, I am one of those people that is a clock in and clock outer. And I think some people assume that there's a right or wrong way to do this hobby, and I think both are fine. I personally, like I said, I benefit from the clock in and clock out because I need to do other things besides just sit in echo chambers of the good stuff too. Like, there's only so many times I can hear about people talking about their characters and what they want to do and how happy they are. Like, it's great, but you know, I want to touch grass sometimes. I think it's healthy.
It is a very healthy thing to do, to not envelop yourself in projects all the time. Sometimes taking a step back and take a break can definitely help the mind quite a bit.
We really like to emphasize mental health and breaks in OSRP. There are some projects that will run for hours and it works for some players. I know for myself, we have put a time cap on our projects, not just for our staff, but also for our players. So we have 4 hours every Friday of what I call developmental plot play. Like, things are happening, DMs are moving, and then we have a soft hour, an hour 5, and that's when DMs aren't moving major plot and players can wind down and leave the session, or they can have their conversations. And we don't get up on people when they can't come to session. Like life happens. Sometimes we have players that come every 3 episodes, and that's fine because at the end of the day, if I want a healthy, consistent player base, I need them to be healthy so they can be consistent in whatever degree they wish to be.
Now, another question I have for you is, did you expect the journey you've been on since you put on the VR headset way back when?
No, I thought personally I was going to get really addicted to just having friends and playing games and maybe kind of continuing that journey as a bit of a sexier streamer because it had an initial sense of dopamine and by proxy profit. Like I had success both socially and even financially from that avenue. And I didn't really have a lot of confidence at that stage in my life. If you told me I would be doing the production management for bigger VTubers and running Return to Blackwell and now hosting a HoloLive character and managing everything, like I'd tell you were crazy. Because that wasn't who I was back then and who I thought I could be. So this is completely off to the side. Never would have expected it.
Oh, well, I'm glad you're able to have such a impactful journey since you put on the headset. It's glad to hear that you've had a journey that has stuck with you.
It's been crazy, that's for sure.
I've noticed with a lot of people, Vrchat has a special way once you put on the headset to give you a journey you were never expecting. A lot of people come in for example, the most common thing we hear people come in is the Uganda Knuckles meme. They saw the videos, they want to come in, they want to have fun. And then they go into a world. It could be a black hat, it could be a rave club, or a roleplay instance. And then they're off somewhere else entirely because someone took them on their tangent of thing they enjoy, and now they're DJing or making music or writing entire stories. And Vrchat has this really unique way of dragging people into those kinds of journeys, whether they expect it or not. And a lot of people really want to share their enjoyment. One of the things I think I have found is late game Vrchat play is sharing what you enjoy with others, which usually also falls on the newbie that comes in and meets the person who's like, okay, I've been around for years. Let's give someone else another fun experience. And then, oh, look, you're a visitor. Come with me. And then the next thing you know, they get the same journey you did.
I definitely feel like Vrchat is a tool. A lot of people call it a social platform, and I understand that. But I've become a producer and a storyteller, and I've learned game development, if you think about it, with the things that I've explained, all because this tool was made for free for me to access. And funny enough, doing these things in Vrchat is actually the hardest sell sometimes to people. Because just as you explained the Uganda Knuckles, and I was really happy, I mentioned I worked with Drumsy, the amount of people I would meet saying that they got into Vrchat because they watched his videos, it shows the impact we can have. But on the other side of the coin, when you try to explain the sheer scope and scale of what we do from a level, like the production level, and then you pin it to Vrchat's name, there's a level of disbelief. I've seen a literal eye roll once in real life because of the perceived notion of what Vrchat is. And most people see it as unfiltered response. Most people see it as Uganda Knuckles, sexy dancers, pedophiles, and trolls. Like, they don't see all this beautiful creative space behind that public facade of what everybody's pushing on YouTube and stuff like that. And I think that exposés on the problems that Vrchat has are super important, and I love seeing the funny videos with people like Drumsy and stuff like that. But that's been something we've had to combat when trying to be taken seriously in this space. And so that's why we do the outreach. That's why we have the Twitter now. That's why we do our cinematic camera POV, and why I'm trying to do things like speak at TwitchCon and go to conventions is because I wanted people to see this creative tool and this new medium for sharing things like DJing and music and storytelling. And boy, is it an uphill battle.
I can understand why. One of the things, at least I believe anyway, I can't say for certain, but a lot of people in VR chat, like any other social platform, you tend to get out of it what you look for. Because where you look or what your expectations are generally will guide what you find. If you go in looking for Uganda Knuckles, boy, you're going to find it everywhere. You go on a Black Cat, there's going to be like at least one of them somewhere. And then you'll go down that road of funny memes. If you're looking for a role play, you're going to find like the NLPD officer walking into the same Black Cat and interacting with you, and you'll find the exact thing you're looking for. Or you'll find Helldivers doing a parade down a random VR chat world instance. Whatever it is you're looking for, you'll interact with it and go down that if it's what you're looking for. It's just not like the same as like YouTube or Twitter where you search for it and blam, it's there. Then the algorithm learns, oh, Lion likes these things. I'm going to show you these things. It's more like a interpersonal, social kind of thing, but still functions somewhat the same, I think.
It's interesting because a lot of those things I totally agree with. The role play thing though, that's one of the things I've noticed is a little bit more difficult with VRchat. And it's not a VRchat problem, it's the way these spaces operate. It's actually harder to find public roleplay lobbies. Places like Purple Lotus, you still have to go and find the Discord to get into the lobby. And a lot of these groups are the same. Like when I was looking for a furry group to join, the good ones that aren't full of trolls, you just have to meet the right people in Publix, right? And then find the groups. And so it takes a lot of exploration and luck. Because for me, how I got my roleplay journey was because it was prominent enough in the stream community adjacent to VRchat. You're just an average VRchat user. It's kind of hard to find this as a hobby. Or if you're not a VRchat user, but you love tabletop and you have a VR headset and you play Alex Half-Life, like how do you find out that this whole internal LARP system even exists? And so that's the big thing that I've been trying to figure out is how to get those people over here. Because I love our normal, consistent group of role players. I love them, but there's just so many other people out there that would love this experience. And I want to make sure that our pool of players grows because then the more players we have and the more interest, the more projects start popping up. The more creativity comes in the space, the more expansion of technology and storytelling, right? And
There is actually one thing I've seen some of the people I've talked with have expressed they do to try to recruit, as one would say, is like, for example, LPD does this. There's a lot of Star Wars communities that do it as well. They'll go into Publix and they'll interact with people. There's a story shared to me by one of the LPD officers where they were in a shootout with a person in a Black Hat over some stolen cheese. And that brought people in because they weren't expected to be in a Black Hat and watch a bunch of officers shoot at someone on the second floor of there. And sometimes that pulls interest because normally when you go to places like Black Hat or those public worlds, you don't really expect a shootout. You go in there, expect people to sit in front of the mirror, see the boy playing the music through his mouth, and that's about all. A few trolls, but when that happens, it pulls a lot of eyes. At least I think so anyway, because you don't expect most of that to happen. So it's a good tactic that may work for you.
It's guerrilla marketing at its base. And like, so that's one of the things that I love about this stuff is I hadn't really considered that. And that's where I enjoy doing interviews like this and meeting other people in other spaces. So like you said, Helldivers, we met a group of Helldiver role players because Haven, actually, I don't know if you've been on Twitter, a while ago, we made a direct replica of Malevelon Creek. And we ran a whole role play event there. And, you know, I talked to Josette and we were kind of exchanging how they do their stuff and how they find people and how they advertise. And it's like I said, nobody gives you a map on how to blaze this new trail when it comes to VR. And so being able to have these conversations, like the guerrilla marketing idea is actually pretty fantastic. Some of my players are pretty scared of Publix, I won't lie. But, you know, because you have the streaming factor too, right? Like it's a little bit less easy for me to bring a bunch of streamers to a public where tits might pop up and then suddenly half of us are banned, right? So
Hmm.
but maybe an offline kind of guerrilla marketing tactic. Yeah.
Yeah. Because a lot of those guerrilla marketing tactics also leave quite an impact. There's been a couple of role players I've chatted with on air and off air where those guerrilla tactics is what pulled them into the roleplay community to begin with. Because that interaction with the LPD left them enough of an impact on them that which they wanted more. So it may work. You may find yourself a new player who's just started Vrchat, be like who the interaction you've had with them stuck with them and pulled them into your group because you've chatted about fighting goblins or something. It may work. I think it will.
Hey, I mean, here's the thing. I can try it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. At least I tried, and that's kind of the spirit of OSRP. We have a bit of a saying, like it's failing forward, right? We'll find out. Maybe we try it and it just doesn't work for us, but we discover something along the way about having open lobbies, that works for us. And I'm totally okay with getting my hands messy, and that's kind of one of the things that has brought me so much success with like my staff, because I don't hire necessarily. A lot of the times I kind of wait and I watch the community and I see people who show interest, and then I kind of start talking to them, and that's kind of how I've built my staff for the past 5 years. And so us kind of just trying things and bringing new people on who show specific interests or come from different walks of life is how we've kind of discovered how things work for us. So I'm all up for this guerrilla marketing tactic. It sounds fun.
There's actually a really good example that happened recently over at PJKT. The Helldivers of all people ran multiple Helldiver parades. We've had a chat with them, and they've been able to find some people who to build the mechs and the different avatars and vehicles for the Helldivers. And then they paraded down Project Community a couple of different times, like you would watch like a Veterans Day parade. They did that a few times as well, or the LPD. And I think with a Veterans Day parade, that may have been, or the Helldiver parade, maybe the first time at Project, people may have even found out those are Helldiver roleplay community. You can be a little creative with your guerrilla marketing too.
It's interesting too, because this is actually the first year that we've really taken part in these spaces. Like we did Project and everything, and it's a new world for a lot of us. Most of us have stayed in this corner, but when we had gone and we had done our interview with Asterix, it definitely kind of perked a lot of interest with us. But there's a level of lack of understanding there, which has made meeting people like Asterix and by proxy a couple of the other staff so helpful, because you heard about how busy we are on top of everybody else having jobs and stuff. So it's being so head down. It was kind of nice to have, I believe it was Deathmap of all people. He reached out his hand and he said, "Hey, you guys wanna come do this thing? Do you guys know about this thing?" And so I think we're gonna be trying to aim for the horror convention too, which I think might be more up our alley.
Well, yeah, HorrorCon is a really amazing thing. I attended last year and was a lot of fun. So I think you would fit right in with the colonial horror roleplay, very much so.
Yeah, we're hoping to make a custom booth actually for that, now that we've kind of understood how things operate and we did our first time, because I think that's where we'll definitely find our people. And the nice thing is that the convention happens right as we go on break. So I will be open to doing like onboarding workshops and casting new people. So it seems prime for us getting an influx of people really interested in the project.
Not to seed ideas, but it would also be a great place to do guerrilla marketing too, because people are going there for horror experience.
See, now the problem is if I unleash my husband and our gaggle of role players, they're just going to be jump scaring people at HorrorCon. That's the problem. Like I'll have leashes on all my tiny chihuahuas, and I'll be trying to keep track of them because they're just going to be HorrorCon. It'll be great, but oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do so many apology fruit baskets, I think.
Well, I wish you the best of luck, and I hope you're able to get more recruitment from going in. Hope all of you enjoy your time at Project and HorrorCon. So I know I did. I went last year, and now I help staff with community relations. So I'm very much have enjoyed every moment of it. So I wish you the same.
Yeah, well, you're selling me right now, so you're doing your job. We're definitely gonna apply. He's doing good. Give him a raise.
So we'll ask the last couple questions before you wrap up. First of which is the name you use, where'd it come from, and why to use it.
So Oneshot RP was just kind of basically what it sounded like. I made the logo and I made the name to kind of communicate that all of our stories kind of jump in theme and style. Every other project, like I mentioned, is very branded to that one storyline, and I wanted to communicate that we were more than just that. That we were kind of like Metaverse, but a little bit more. I want to use the word controlled, not in a bad way, but kind of centralized. And that if you came to our space, you'd be in a Discord and a community where you'd be able to take part in multiple one-offs. And from that, we branched into workshops and everything. And we actually are slowly working on rebranding to Oneshot Studios because of this experience, mostly due to the fact that now that we've started doing this, we've been working with indie game developers. I can't say much more than that at this stage, but on top of our work in VR, we've also kind of moved into game development.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I can't wait to see what you guys produce. You have a fan already.
It'll be years from now. It's just going to be years, but that we're helping with other indie games right now, but we've got plans and we have plans is how I'll put it.
And your VRchat name, where'd that come from? And why to use it?
I've been Sprixer since I was in 8th grade, and spoiler alert, I'm in my 30s, so it's always just been me. I, like most teenagers, I was sitting in my room with my best friend talking about a band we'd never start. Core memory for so many teenagers. And I was like, I love the word Spritzer, but like, what if we're edgy and we make like an X or something? And obviously the band never took off because I'm here right now. And I just kind of took it over as my username. And so I have been Sprixer since I was like 15. So if you see a Sprixer online, 90% of the time it's me, actually, funny enough.
Oh, wow. That's actually a really cool way that you've gotten your name. Thank you for sharing the story. That's appreciated. And the avatar. Honestly, I do enjoy hearing how and why people decide to represent themselves. Because how you do is kind of personal to you. Everyone has a different reason, whether it's a username you've had since 8th grade or it's from a funny core memory when you're 5. Whatever it is, I always enjoy kind of hearing those things. It's like lore. So thank you. And the avatar you're in, why did you choose it? Why to use it? Is there anything about it that means anything to you?
So I've been on a constant search of branding since I started streaming. I kind of started as an elf girl, tried that kitsune energy. I've always just really loved sharks. They've been my favorite animal since God knows when. I didn't initially brand as a shark, funny enough, because this was back in the heyday of all of the big VTubers, and there was like this really weird stigma about being a shark because one of the other really big VTubers was a shark. So I didn't want to catch no smoke for that. And then, after spending enough time in the community, I was, what's the term? I said, fuck it. And so I am normally, because of all the role play I do, I fall in love with a lot of my avatars and my OCs. Because, when you role play, you get multiple avatars. So the energy and VTuber lore for this is being a sharkubus that can kind of just change shape at will. But the clothing and everything is because I'm a dev. I want to be comfy. I like to look normal and comfy. It's like, why would you wear a sweater and baggy pants in VR? I'm like, well, why wouldn't I?
Fair point. Oh. Well, thank you very much for your time. It was an absolute honor to hear about you, Oneshot RP, and your entire journey. So it's been an honor having you. Thank you for your time.
I had a lot of fun. This was good. If you ever do a sequel, I'll give you my husband. You can yap to him. Although I don't know if he'd be free. He's a yapper.
We don't have length limits. We will have a minimum, which is an hour. But otherwise, if it goes on for 3 hours, we talked with Rob Roman, and that went on for the longest. I think it was over 3.5 hours long, I believe.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Yeah. If you ever want to do a follow up,
Hell yeah.
I just can't promise you'll get home to your wife and kids kind of energy because he'll keep you. He'll take you on a whole tour.
I'd be honored to meet him. And if anyone in the audience wishes to find you or meet both of you on their own, where would they go to find you or any of your works? Anything you want to plug?
So we do have a Twitter. The Twitter is OSRP News. That's a good place to see a lot of our viewing community and their engagement with us, as well as clips and stuff like that. We recently started a Twitter with the same handle. We do have a website. It is oneshots RP.com. That's a good place to kind of get a bit of a sense of scope for our projects. We do a bit of our fundraising there with merchandise and stuff. Our Twitch channel, Oneshot RP, is where you can find saved videos for our ongoing projects, our watch-alongs, our Discord link, which Discord will be the best way to kind of come in and learn about the community. I say just jump in, take your shoes off, jump in, because everybody's really kind. And that's pretty much it.
We'll make sure we have all of that in the description of both of the video and the podcast for people to listen to. If you're in the audience or watching YouTube, you go down to the video description. It'll be in there. Guest links, one easy place for you to find. Spotify, same place, but you go to the episode description. It's a bit of an adventure, but it's still there at the same place, same label. So we'll make sure it's easy for you to find one shot and just one click away, and hope you're able to enjoy them. This will interact with you, the audience, just a little bit, and we'll ask you a question. What is your favorite tabletop or roleplay story? I'll share you mine. When I first played, actually got into a tabletop years ago. I was playing Age of Conan, old system. But the first character I ever played was a rogue that I tried following the party because it would never really introduce correctly. So I just hopped under the cart and then off I went to the other direction where we weren't going, and the character died. Didn't die, but disappeared. So it was a memorable one for me. I enjoyed myself then. With that being said, I hope to hear yours. We always enjoy reading them. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good day in the metaverse.
I wonder if we can ride the train and go inside the fucking over there. That'd be cool.
That would be cool. How big that wall is.
It goes in there and goes around. Why? And it goes around.
Oh, it does. Holy shit.
Fuck yeah, it goes fucking around. I don't know where it goes. Like I said, I just got here. I don't know where everything is.
Huh.
I have to check this place out.
Definitely, we're gonna have to.
There's another one. There's another one I gotta show you that It's called the. Yeah, hold on. Another one is called the Cozy Woods. That one's cool.
Oh, okay. We're definitely gonna have to check that out too. There's a bunch we're gonna have to check out.
Yeah, there's some new ones in.